I often joke about leaving my 9 to 5 job to open my business so that I can work 24/7. But is it really a joke? This statement is false in two parts. The first, since entering the world of corporate finance, I've never worked a 9 to 5 job ever. And the second was that it was a joke, because it is no joke. There are moments where I feel like I work 24/7 and moments when I actually do. And perhaps this is the first mistake all these leading coaches will tell me that I'm making. But when you run a business, when you are passionate about something like I am about what I do, there have been plenty of mistakes that I've made along the way. But I don't think this is one of them. So join me as we unpack this. I'd always had my sights set on creating my own business. And over the years, the vision of this faded somewhat as I became very comfortable in the corporate roles I found myself in. CFO, Director of Finance, Asian Pacific Head of Finance, Global Corporate CFO, Commercial Manager. These were just some of the roles that gave me the experience and exposure to big business that are foundational in my business today. And they were fun. I had a ball. I got to work with some amazing industry leaders, owners of big corporations. I got to travel and lead teams that were just amazing. And I got comfortable. Why wouldn't I? Money was great. I was learning heaps until I was challenged in the biggest way I'd ever been challenged in a role before. I had just been offered a large pay rise and complimented for my work, which was very flattering. But in the same conversation, I was told that the request that I'd put in to give my team a pay rise had been rejected and that no other pay rises were actually going to take place. I couldn't, in good conscience, go to my team, thank them for such an amazing job, and then proceed to tell them that they're not getting anything more than a pat on the back for their hard work. So I asked my boss if I could take the pay rise they were offering me and distribute it accordingly to my team. I was met with a hard no and advised that things didn't happen that way. I was then told, mind you, I'm still in the same meeting where I was just complimented for my work and they were giving me a pay rise, that they didn't need managers behaving this way and that it would be my best interest to take the pay rise and get back to it. I politely told him that I couldn't work for them anymore and I walked out that afternoon. I must have walked around the block at least 30 times before getting into my car and heading home. Luckily, I was a couple of weeks shy of getting on a plane destined for Africa. So I focused on that whilst I proceeded to contact recruiters. My trip to Africa and an incident that almost left me blind, that's a story for another moment, got me seeing things clearly. I was reminded that I wanted to do something for myself and that I needed to use this moment, this opportunity, to do so. When I got back, I quickly picked up a few contracts with various businesses, which evidently made it very clear what I was meant to do with my experience. And that was to bring big business thinking to small business owners. What I can talk about all day, which I guess is a good indication that I was on the right path. But here we are to examine the mistakes I made in business, and boy, did they come thick and fast from that point. When I made the decision to hit go on my business, boy, did they come. Because the thing is that whilst I'd participated in the management and running of many businesses in different industries, I'd never actually owned one. And boy, was this a different ballgame altogether. So the first mistake I made was so rookie. I remember thinking that every day I would sit down and start my day with a nice cup of tea whilst catching up on the day's events. This would be followed by a walk, shower, and then work. If you know, you know. Just like I'd never worked a 9-to-5 job in my life, this plan never happened either. It was my first big mistake that I'd made. And the mistake wasn't in having the cup of tea or starting my day this way. It was in thinking that work was just going to land in my lap and I would hit the ground running. 11 years ago, when I started my business, the term coach wasn't saturated in the market as it is now. Using social media for business advertising was still finding its way. And what I was doing didn't fit into the traditional slot of financial planner or accountant roles, as many business owners had been conditioned to perceive that they needed. This was new. And here I was thinking that after a cup of tea and a read of the newspaper, my phone would start ringing and I would just start working. The hustle was real, my friend. I had to learn this very quickly. I didn't know much about social media besides the social aspect. I had to learn about websites and using these as a vehicle to start the onboarding process with clients. And I had to learn the art of patience. First thing I had to do was find people who knew more about these things than me. So I got myself a web designer, a graphic designer for my logo, and someone to help set up my socials. Whilst I was the expert in my area of expertise, it was a good lesson for me to learn that I can't master everything. Laying these foundations right was so important. The second mistake I made was trusting that my immediate network was going to carry my business. Now, by immediate network, I'm not talking about friends and family. I'm talking about extended networks like those that I'd worked with, those that I'd done business with at one point or another. I started the conversation that I was going out on my own, explaining what I'd be doing and who I'd be servicing. This was met with such enthusiasm and confirmation that this was a brilliant idea. I even got many telling me that they knew such and such and that this was what they needed. I got the every business owner needs someone like you in their corner. These conversations were inspiring and provided me with the confirmation that I had the right idea until crickets. Well, not entirely crickets, but I didn't have the influx I was expecting based on those conversations. The lesson wasn't in not trusting my network, but more in me learning that running a business is so much bigger than just those that I know. And the reality is that's okay. Because whilst these people may not be my people are out there. These 11 years have taught me that it's going to take a lot more than a couple of conversations for people to know, like, and trust me. Even if what I have to offer is the right offer. If they don't know you, they don't know you. Whilst I'm on the topic of this know, like, and trust factor, the third mistake I made was assuming that what I had to offer was for everyone. Now, I know I'm not alone in this thinking. Every business owner could convince themselves that they check every box for everyone at one point or another. And whilst on paper, what I have to offer does in fact do this, the years have taught me that regardless of that, there are some profiles that just don't buy what I have to sell. And I've had to learn to be okay with that. And that was a hard lesson to learn, I can tell you, because here I was in the corporate world working predominantly with male business owners, and yet my audience as a business owner is predominantly female business owners. And again, this wasn't by choice, but don't get me wrong, I love working with female business owners. I find that they're all about the learning. They love to improve their skills, they can multitask, and they see the value in guidance. It was just a steep learning curve for me to have to pivot so rapidly when I saw this trend forming. The thing is, the work I do actually is available to everyone if they want it. I'm in the business of offering financial freedom strategies to business owners, all and sundry. So everyone is welcome. But we quickly learned that when we're working on our target message, when we're working on our service offerings, we need to go to where the sales are made. And that's where our customer is. And a customer is simply defined as someone who purchases something from us. It's that simple. The fourth mistake I made was in the systems I had or didn't have. Whilst I had someone work with me on developing my first website, I quickly realized that websites aren't a set and forget landing page. They need to reflect the needs of our customers, both current and potential, at all times. This changes rapidly. So too did the way in which I had to present my information. sometimes daily. I couldn't just keep ringing an external person when I wanted a minor thing changed. I had to learn how to manage these things on my own. The same rang true for email marketing platforms, graphic design, etc. So I quickly learned how to work with programs such as Canva, ConvertKit, Kartra, Squarespace, even all the programs I use to get this podcast off the ground, like Audacity and Sked, my scheduling system. I'm a freaking accountant, my friend. What a headspin. But I need to know it. This was ingrained in me very early on in my career. You see, when I was working in corporate, it used to frustrate me when something would land on my desk and when I questioned how the figures were arrived at or where the document came from, somehow some wouldn't even know, but would try to convince me, not to worry, that's not your role. But I can tell you, there is nothing more important than learning where something comes from, whether it be figures or documents, because one day it might not show up when it's scheduled to. And then what do? I guess it's also why I am so passionate about teaching businesses where to locate their numbers. Because whilst you have an accountant or a bookkeeper who will occasionally get them up to date for you, what about the unexpected times when you need to put your hands on them and don't know how? I saw a lot of this during the pandemic when business owners were trying to apply for grants that they were clearly entitled to, only to struggle to get in touch with their accountants because they were busy. And then there was the timing because it became an issue with things being delayed because they couldn't do part of it themselves. We need to know where things are for a number of reasons. So whilst I may not do my socials or set my Facebook ads, in the event I ever needed to know how to do this, I'm not handing that much power over to someone else blindly. I don't need to know everything, but I at least need to know the basics. Whilst I can go on and on about the mistakes I've made in business, the last one I wanted to discuss here was in stretching myself too thin and burning out. This happened to me back in 2013. I launched my business in 2011 and all was going well. During that first year, I gave birth to my son. Yep, I know. Crazy. As I was new to this whole juggle, I didn't feel like I could drop the ball on any aspect of my life. So a month after giving birth, back to work I went, albeit I was working from home, which meant I could work around the baby. And given the development of the resource for my clients, I was able to do these at any time of the day. So I would reserve this work for after hours, after dinner, when the baby and my partner had gone to bed. Thinking I was going to be fine, I would work until all hours, sometimes overnight, with the internal promise of having a nap when the baby slept the next day. Boy, was I wrong to think that my baby would revolve around my needs. But working was where I felt the most alive, and I really wanted this business to work. So I gave it everything until I literally had no more to give. My son suffered a stroke, and I know I've spoken about this before, but it created this tailspin that I couldn't get control of, which added to the pressure of trying to keep every plate spinning. But my body had other ideas. It almost gave up. I ended up hitting a wall in the most epic way where I couldn't function. I couldn't put the thought together. I would cry all the time and generally have nothing to give anyone, not even myself. I did this to myself because I didn't set boundaries when I first started. Even 11 years down the track, I don't think I have fully recovered from that time. So boundaries are important to me now. Clear time allocation. I spoke about this exact thing in an episode about mum guilt. Check out episode 72. Setting boundaries means leaving my laptop home when I go to the water park with my son and actually getting in the water with him and having fun. It means setting expectations with my family when I need to get a piece of work done, how much I need from them during that time so I can still achieve what I need to achieve. It means having a clear plan during my working hours and knowing realistically what I can achieve and when. It means it needs to work. You know what? It's not perfect, but we're getting there. The one mistake I didn't make, though, was going into business. This choice was one of the best I have ever made. And whilst I'm still making mistakes and working through the learnings, I wouldn't trade the learning curves for anything. If we aren't making mistakes, how can we learn, right? Thank you for your time, my friend. Stay well. And whatever you're doing today, I hope you make it count.